Picture yourself strolling the street and abruptly a police officer motions you to give your identity card. Unfortunately, you don't have it with you, and despite all efforts, you can't find it. The policemen throw you into the truck and shut the door without saying anything else. Or maybe consider this: on one night in which you are at a bar with friends, laughing and having fun. Then in the morning of that time, after waking up, realize that you are in a train full of strangers who do not know why they are there or where they should be dropped off next. Someone once commented in one of our videos about the Gulag requesting a video on Cannibal Island, and this is the second part of things you requested. As previously stated in the Gulag video, under Stalin, there was a forced labor system called the Gulag where many people were put to work in these camps. Also, some of them were completely innocent, but Stalin was afraid they may someday betray Soviet Union. To be sure, there were a lot of criminals among them. Stalin had a conviction that he can turn these people into valuable members of society, and to some extent it worked out. Through all that cheap labor, Stalin managed to greatly improve Soviet economy as well as industry. However, there were those who did not fit with what the government wanted and thus became branded as undesirable elements. From government's or perhaps Stalin's point of view, who qualified as undesirable elements. They included people who had committed even minor thefts, vagrants, addicts, people who the regime thought threatened public order or could be a threat to the regime, even those who simply didn't have ID and were completely innocent. The Gulag was said to have been created for people who were working and could be productive in society, but they only wanted to purge these allegedly extra people from society. It was in 1933 when Stalin launched urban cleansing operation for Moscow and Leningrad, which resulted to the arrest of hundreds thousands of people, including all different types. Many of them went to the Gulag, while some were exiled to faraway parts of Siberia, and out of these few 100,000 persons, approximately 6,700 particularly were chosen for an experiment. This is considered as one of the darkest chapters in Soviet history, if not of the last century. The concept behind this experiment was that these unwanted elements would be turned into agricultural laborers in remote areas. However, they went to a place where farming was meaningless and there were no living conditions, let alone facilities for agriculture. On May 18, 1933, in mid-May, the unwanted elements' first group, comprised of 4,556 men and 322 women, were dispatched by train and then shipped to this direction: Siberia's western Ob River's Nazino Island, which was later changed to Cannibal Island. To get a sense of how big it is, you might want to compare it to Central Park in New York, which covers twice the space that it does. Central Park is approximately 340 hectares, while Nazino Island is roughly 600 hectares. Things were so bad that during the first transport itself, before they even reached the island, some people got sick and some even died. It should be remembered that on day one alone, before any real horrors began, 27 people had already died. You may argue, but even if it's a prison, they must have given them something, right? Of course, but this place has nothing else like it. Each person got a 2-kilogram bag of flour each, with good luck said to them. No tools, no tents, no blankets. Not even a vessel for mixing their flour in order to make food out of it were given to them by anybody who put them here. They did not have anything. Also, they gave them the flour after 4 days and not immediately. No food was eaten until the 4th day when the flour was distributed. But why would one need just plain flour? And yet even a renowned chef such as Gordon Ramsay would fail to make anything out of that amount of flour in absence of tools for baking, let alone clean water for drinking. Others took river water mixed with dough made from this flour as if it was some kind of soup to drink. Do you think they got satisfied? Not at all. But all of them caught severe diarrhea later on due to that consumption. Those who witnessed this and learned their lesson decided to eat the flour dry. They laboriously gulped it down, but this wasn't much more successful because their intestines got blocked. Some even choked to death while eating the flour. Sounds tough, doesn't it? Well, brace yourself because the main story hasn't even started yet. Siberia has short summers that last for a few months and very cold winters, where temperature drops to as low as -60 degrees Celsius. Now it is the end of spring, so it is not freezing, but it still feels like Siberian cold. This is even worse for the starving and thirsty ones without shelter who have been marooned upon a tiny island, which is perhaps the ice itself. It rained often, sending torrents of water over their heads and turning the ground into a chilling swamp. As a result, some people wouldn't wake up every morning anymore in this region, to this extent that when they woke up in the morning, the first thing they'd do was check to see who had died. If they hadn't died, the person next to them had. If that person was still alive, someone 2 or 3 spots over was definitely dead. On the very first day of captivity, 295 died. Before things got any worse, nearly 300 people were already dead. They did not survive either due to cold weather, illness, fights, or starvation. People started fighting over others' flour a few hours after they received it. Isn't that astonishing? They fought to the death for non-edible flour, which upon consumption would have caused ailment. Can you now imagine what horrors they could have faced to start battering and killing over the same flour? There were all sorts of people there. Tyrants, gangsters, drug addicts, bums, or innocent ones like political prisoners. The strong had teamed up into gangs and found others whom they would corner and beat up before taking their foodstuffs. "I once saw a grown man beating up a small boy," said one of the guards in his report. "When I got closer, I realized that he was trying to take off the little boy's bag of flour, but despite his pleas for mercy, the man seemed oblivious. It was becoming a case of survival of the fittest. One eats or is eaten." A few days had passed since they brought the second group of undesirables to the island, and things had gotten so bad that people had started turning on each other. Survival instincts took over humanity, and people began eating one another. At first, they were eating the dead. One report later said, "One morning, we found the body of a young woman whose flesh had been half-eaten. Beside the corpse, a man was sitting, still chewing on raw meat." But they weren't satisfied with that, and soon enough, they started hunting each other. They basically turned into something like Neanderthals, humans who lived 100,000 years ago, and we fully explained in this video how they would also hunt and eat each other when they got hungry. Anyway, cannibalism became normal, and now people were not only hungry but also had to run from those trying to hunt them. The weaker ones, or women and girls, were more at risk and had practically said their last prayers. Naturally, you wouldn't expect them to set up toilets and stuff in a place like this, would you? The person just went anywhere, and the place was filled up with excrements, puke, and dead bodies. You cannot know how it smells to have all these 3 things around you at once, as well as what kind of diseases might be there. When they sent a doctor over there, he looked as if he had come out of a horror film when he came out after examining the island. He said they looked like walking skeletons, their skin clung to their bones, and their eyes were deep set. Some of them could not even walk, and they were crawling on the ground. As we mentioned, this place was like a gulag with all kinds of people in it. Many young girls who did not have any IDs were brought here for no reasons. Irrespective whether you have an ID or not but left it behind accidentally or lost it somewhere, the officers didn't care for further investigation or trials, etc. They would only load you onto a truck, then onto a train, then into a ship, and finally send you off to Nazino Island. For instance, there was a boy who was brought there because he was joking around with his friends, and one of them made a joke about Stalin's mustache. They all laughed, and the next day, the police came after them, caught him, and the rest ran away. The guards on the island were notorious for their cruelty. They didn't care that these were human beings too. For fun and entertainment, they would do whatever they wanted. For example, they'd throw a piece of bread among a few starving prisoners so that they would fight over it and beat or kill each other. And the guards would stand there, watching it like a show, enjoying it. Or some guards would shoot at prisoners just for fun. You might ask, wasn't it just random to shoot like that? Yeah, they had the right to shoot anyone trying to escape, but they'd shoot whoever they wanted, and if anyone questioned them, they'd just say he was trying to escape. The other prisoners couldn't do anything about it. We mentioned that there were women prisoners there too. These guards would trade with the women, giving them bread or cigarettes in exchange for sex. Order was supposed to be kept by the guards and prisoners stopped from escaping, but instead they were terrible at it. They did not keep order, they made it worse, quarreling with other inmates by tossing that bread in between them or any other thing which added on to the problem. Escaping from here is like trying to escape death, hunger, cold, a river around the island, and most important of all, guards who were constantly patrolling the island in boats. It may be only a few that could make it out, but there were only a handful. As we mentioned earlier about the officers who had permission to shoot anyone attempting to flee, because they viewed fleeing as fun and would hunt down those involved. The one attempting an escape was starving too, frail for swimming or running fast, particularly in that kind of weather conditions. A couple of bullets pumped into them by the officers and they would not have to suffer anymore. Very few got away, but the whole Soviet Union was after them, and they were always on the run. Whenever they caught one, they'd send them to other labor camps, which weren't much better, but at least not as bad as this one. After this time period, some reports came to the Soviet authorities that things were really bad and they needed to do something. Vasil Velichko went there to inspect it and find out how well the camp had been. This man was shocked when he arrived there. An 11-page report documented the situation as terribly unfortunate. In July 1933, it was decided on evacuation of the island, but before they could get the troops there, things got worse than what Vasil had described in his report. Out of about 6,700 persons, over 4,000 were dead or missing. The others who remained at the place were relocated to other camps, only little better, which was explained in full in this video. Drop your comments and requests below, and if you enjoyed watching this video, please like and subscribe.